Well, first and foremost, thank you for that, Jeremy. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone today. As Jeremy mentioned, my primary role and responsibility here today is twofold. One, demonstrate how FHWA is postured to address hurricane season, and two, address where we've been and where we could be going in terms of this season. That being said, Emergency Operations Program. We actually fall under Office of Transportation Operations, which falls under the Office of Operations, under headquarters at FHWA. Slide, please. So on this slide, I really want to help understand where we're postured and how we're structured, okay? At FHWA headquarters, EOPS consists of 3 personnel. I'm the emergency coordinator. Jason Carnes is our transportation security coordinator, and Franby Franco is our cybersecurity coordinator. Folks, this is our bread and butter. This is all we do in this lifetime, so to speak. We handle nothing but natural disasters and man-made events on behalf of the administration. That's important to note because at the division level, we have field emergency coordinators and alternate field emergency coordinators. These individuals are fulfilling a collateral duty in terms of emergency operations. We have deputy administrators, we have HR professionals, EEO specialists, engineers, and financial experts, all working in a collateral capacity to support the emergency operations program for the administration. Now, we have 50 division offices, 1 for each state. We also have 2 division offices in the District of Columbia, as well as Puerto Rico. And we have 4 additional offices in Philadelphia, New York City, Chicago, and LA. So we have 56 total offices with field emergency coordinators and alternate field emergency coordinators. So things can get busy rather quickly, but we have the proper structure, proper staffing, spread across the divisions, spread across the country. Now, FEMA, as they approach hurricane season, they actually have their 10 different regions, okay? FHWA is a bit different. We have 4 different regions for the entire administration. We have the Director of Field Services for the North, South, Mid-America, and the West. I say that because when you talk to FEMA, you have apples and oranges. So our 4 regions have to talk to the 10 regions of FEMA. My teammates and I, Jason, Frandy, and myself, serve as that conduit to ensure that FEMA and the interagency and the bigger Department of Transportation has everything they need in the event of a hurricane, in the event of a bad day, at the regional, at the division, at the state level. Now, what's unique about this structure here at FHWA, which I've never seen in my 20 years experience, in the Army, at DOD, DHS, or bigger DOT, the Highway Crisis Advisory Team. If on a bad day, and forgive me if I keep saying the state of Texas, but I keep referring back to what happened this past weekend and earlier this week with Tropical Storm and Hurricane Beryl approaching the coastline of Texas. What we saw was essentially that the hurricane was going from a tropical storm to a hurricane, and that we might actually have to activate. I'll get to that a little bit later, but we were actually postured to hold what's called an HCAT, the Highway Crisis Advisory Team. Within a moment's notice, I could contact, along with my peers, front office staff, and we could assemble senior leadership from the administration to talk directly to the impacted divisions, whether it was Texas alone or Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. We could get everyone on one team's call probably within an hour's notification. I've never seen this before in my entire career, this streamlined approach to ensuring that the end customer, the state, the civilian population has everything they need. The state level Department of Transportation has everything they need in a moment's notice. We can have the administrator, the deputy, as well as the executive director all attend this conference, or at least have representation from their offices, represent their office, and essentially ensure that the division office has everything they need to meet the needs of the civilian population. These meetings can go for 15 minutes, they can go for an hour or 2 hours, but this is an opportunity for the division level experts, the representation for FHWA at the state level, to ask the tough questions of our leadership to get the right answer to provide back to the state and the governor. Slide, please. Now, this is important to note because how we report information, that information comes directly from the division level and the state level up to us at the EOPS team, and we report that up to our administration team. We have what's called FHWA Order 5181.1 Charlie. Sounds very technical, certain aspects of it are, but it's a 12-page document that really highlight what our reporting requirements are of each state level division. That being said, the 3 points that I highlighted, there's 7 total on your screen. The first 3 that I highlighted are really what we'd be looking for in the event of a hurricane. Any closures to the national highway system beyond 8 hours, any damage to infrastructure, whether it's roadways, even bridges, or anything really generating national media interest or needs that we are at FHWA headquarters are not aware of, okay? The last 4 bullet points are really natural or not natural events. They're man-made events that we would really look at and focus on. So if in the event of a contraflow operations, if we have a crash involving 6 or more fatalities and 10 vehicles, we can report that. We would report that up to our colleagues across the administration and then report that up to the bigger Department of Transportation. Sometimes the DOT would report that to the interagency like FEMA or Homeland Security or even the White House Situation Room, just to make sure that we have visibility on what's taking place in that area that's impacted by the hurricane. In this case, this past week, it was Texas. Slide, please. So now that you have an understanding of how we're structured and how we report, these are the actual events that we take during significant incidents. Now, what I really want to explain is that there's a lot of information on this slide. The overall process is rather linear. So if the big Department of Transportation has a requirement, they'll come to the different modes of the department, the FAA, the Federal Rail Administrations, the MARADs, the Highway Administration. They'll come to us as the emergency response team members and basically say, these are the requests for information that we have. This is the information the front office is asking for. What can you provide to us? My colleagues and I would turn to the divisions that are impacted by the either natural disaster or man-made event, collect that information and report back up the chain of command, so to speak. So we serve as that conduit, we serve as that buffer, and we help facilitate those tough discussions for coordination, collaboration, not just with internal DOT components, but external like FEMA or DHS. Now, what we saw last Friday, around 8 a.m., I came into the office and I had noticed that the spaghetti models and the track of Hurricane Beryl, as it was coming across the Yucatan Peninsula, it was tracking a bit higher than what we normally thought it would be, or where it should be, rather. I knew it was going to sit in the Gulf of Mexico for a day or two and possibly get some rapid intensification, and I was a bit concerned. So about 8 a.m. on Friday morning, I reached out to our division office in Austin, Texas, and provided them a rundown on what we're seeing and what we're hearing from bigger Department of Transportation. At that time, there was no reporting requirement, but I at least advised our team members out in Texas that we might very well activate over the weekend, be prepared to, in the midst of battling a hurricane out your back door, so to speak, you'd be required to report up information to the bigger department. We got a thumbs up. Our division administration team was ready to go. They knew what was happening with the Texas Department of Transportation. They were reporting up in real time. Now, around 3 p.m., just before close of business on Friday, the Department of Transportation, OST, as you see on this slide, OST is the Office of the Secretary of Transportation. This element basically decided that they would send out an alert order. That alert order was a 2-page document basically saying within the next 24 to 48 hours, be prepared to activate and provide information in real time to the front office as well as the interagency. So we were waiting for that activation order all weekend. My peers and I were in contact all weekend with the Texas division of FHWA. The activation never came, and I was actually a bit surprised. This is the first hurricane of the season. Yes, it was a Category 1, and I've heard peers say that it's only a Category 1. But last I checked, as of 10 minutes before this briefing, there were 8 deaths in Texas this past week as a result of this just Category 1 hurricane. So this needs to be taken seriously, but we didn't activate, and we were still in contact with our administration team down at the division level. That being said, had we activated, OST would essentially expect prescribed timelines to be met by us, by other elements of the DOT like FAA, Federal Rail Administration, and really provide next steps for information collection and dissemination. We would assemble on what's called the Transportation Operations Center, or the TOC. The TOC is a 24/7 emergency operations center within OST. They're the conduit for the entire department. Information comes in and comes out from that one site. So essentially what would happen is myself and my teammates would either physically report to the TOC, or we would virtually dial into our seat at the TOC to basically provide the information that they're requesting. At the same time, DOT would deploy folks over to FEMA, the National Response Coordination Center, to provide support for what's called ESF number 1, Emergency Support Function number 1, all things transportation, air, rail, sea, and highway, okay? Now, anything that's done at the DOT level, we replicate here at Highway Administration. So in the process of actually deploying to the TOC or supporting the TOC, what we would do is issue what's called an IRO, an Incident Reporting Order. That IRO is the graphic you see on your screen. It's the first 2 pages that you see on your screen of what that document actually looks like. It looks very detailed. It is. It can be. I've seen documents that are 2 pages. I've seen documents that are 15 pages. It's really asking the divisions to provide the 5 W's as well as the how. What are you doing to support the state level Department of Transportation? How is your element, the division level, postured to address the situation? And really, what are your unmet needs? Okay. That information goes down to the division. They package it, disseminate it, and send it back to us at the EOPS team. What's important to note is that everything is done on East Coast time. I say that because that's where FHWA headquarters is, and that's where DOT headquarters is here in DC. So if we have a real world event in Texas, which is not East Coast time, or California or Hawaii, those folks out west are going to have to accommodate our timeline. So we kind of have to back everything up. We would work with our OST partners to figure out when that timeline would be to meet the threshold. Now, again, I've seen documents that are 10, 15 pages that we receive back from our division offices. We need to pare that down at the EOPS level to maybe 2 or 3 pages to submit it into what's called Web EOC, the Web-Based Emergency Operations Center. It's a portal of sorts that goes right into the Transportation Operations Center. So we have to pare that down. At the same time, our colleagues at DOT and the Transportation Operations Center are taking the different modes from across the department. They're taking those 15, 20 pages that are being submitted by everyone, and they're paring it down to a total of 2-page document for the executive summary that goes straight to the front office, straight for Secretary Pete, Deputy Secretary Trottenberg, as well as the different modes across the agency, but also across the interagency, okay? And that's key. I had mentioned earlier, as DOT activates, we activate with that IRO, Incident Reporting Order. We also have a different cadence or battle rhythm or discussions with our colleagues across OST, and that's also what's expected at the division level. So the FHWA Highway Leadership team assembles under the HCAT, the Highway Crisis Advisory Team, and we can actually talk to the division in real time on what they need, and we can provide supplemental reports to talk to support whatever's going into that executive summary for the front office. Slide, please. So now that you know how we're structured, how we report, and what's actually taking place during these significant events like a hurricane, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about where we've been and where we could be going in this hurricane season. Again, a lot of information on this slide. Anything in red is 2023 hurricane season. Anything in light blue is 2024. That graphic at the bottom of the screen from those 3 assets of those 3 stakeholders is really generating the report for what we're seeing for the hurricane season that we're currently in. Now, that first bullet point, on average, a season of hurricanes produces 14 storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. These numbers are from 1991 through 2020. So these are from 29 years worth of data. These are the average numbers. Last year for 2023, we saw an increased number of storms at 20. We saw the spot-on number average of 7 hurricanes and the spot-on number of 3 major hurricanes. So to some, that might not seem like an uptick, but to me, I saw the 20 compared to the 14 storms that we should have had from the past 29 years, and I was a bit concerned. To the far right, you see 7 named storms, 6 tropical storms and 1 hurricane. These are the level of support, or these are the instances that we provided support from FHWA EOPS to ESF1, the TOC, OST, and the bigger Department of Transportation. What's unique about this on bullet point number 6, Tropical Storm Hillary? Folks, when you hear hurricane season, a lot of folks automatically think about the Atlantic Ocean, okay? But it's also the Pacific. We have typhoons out west. Tropical Storm Hillary was a hurricane and approached Southern California and became a tropical storm, I think, in September or October timeframe of last year. It was unprecedented, right? On number 7, Hurricane Idalia came up the Gulf Coast, so to speak, and impacted Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, even North Carolina. But this is what we were addressing last year and making sure that all that information that's being requested of us is going down to the division level and coming back up so that we can ensure that the executive summary is meeting the intent of the secretary and the front office. Now, for 2024, again, we're seeing 20 named storms, so the same as last year, but we're seeing 8 hurricanes potentially. We're seeing 4 are going to intensify to major hurricanes. So that, in combination with the rapid intensification we saw last year on several storms, has me a bit concerned. We saw Hurricane Otis go from a tropical storm last year and just off of southern Mexico, went from a tropical storm to a hurricane category 5 in roughly 12 to 14 hours. That rapid intensification very well could have taken place this past week as landfall was made in Texas. Thankfully, it didn't. But again, as I mentioned, there were 8 deaths, and to me, that's 8 too many. Slide, please. So this next graphic is really what we saw last year. And folks, we were very fortunate. Puerto Rico was graced several times. We had several instances in the Gulf of Mexico, and Florida was certainly impacted by Hurricane Idalia. But if some of these storms had shifted to the left, the east coast of the U.S. would have absolutely been impacted. We would have been activated, we would have been supporting the bigger department, and we would have been supporting our divisions at the state level to accommodate those state level departments of transportation and the civilian population. On the far right, you see the wind speeds for the top tropical storms as well as the depression, and then category 1 through 5 hurricane wind speeds. And again, Hurricane Otis impacted Acapulco, Mexico, and went from a tropical storm around 73 miles an hour up past 157 miles per hour. So that was pretty quick for that rapid intensification. It'll be interesting to see what happens next year and what our 2024 slide deck for this might appear to be. But right now we're seeing a lot of activity coming off of the west coast of Africa and coming along the southern line of the Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico. So it might be a busier season than normal for the Gulf of Mexico. Slide, please. So as we come to the end of my presentation, I really want to remind everyone that hurricane season is 6 months long. Folks have a false sense of security when they get to the fall time frame and they think that hurricane season is over. It's not. So these are 3 assets rather that I use on a daily basis during hurricane season to include nights, weekends, holidays. But National Hurricane Center, the weather.gov are 2 instrumental websites. I was really turned on to the 3rd web link last year. It's a Pacific-based warning measure that looks at Hawaii, Guam, the West Coast, the territories, as well as Alaska. This is the Joint Typhoon Warning Center from Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. We use this as a platform to actually look at a deeper dive of Tropical Storm Hillary and what was going to actually impact in Southern California. So we can make coordination efforts with our team out in California. And then we also use this to look at Hurricane Otis and what that meant for Acapulco, Mexico. Even though there wasn't an impact to the United States, we saw that rapid intensification as a real threat and something that we should prepare for later this season. Slide, please. To close everything out, I mentioned I'm one of 3 team members on the EOPS team. This is our contact information for Jason, who's a transportation security coordinator, Fran Franco as our cybersecurity coordinator, and myself as the emergency coordinator. If you want to reach out, by all means, don't hesitate. Both gentlemen have a wealth of knowledge and experience. If you want to reach all 3 of us, the best way to do so is that website, or at least that link or email address at FHWA_headquarters EC@dot.gov. You shoot us an email there, you'll get all 3 of us, and we'll be happy to help out. Subject to any questions, that's the conclusion of my brief.